The Truth and Taxation meeting. So the public hearing is now for proposed 2021 property taxes, which actually come to the school fiscal year 2022. The agenda, we'll talk about some changes in the general fund allowances, review the school district budget. I'll show you the levies, and then if there's any questions, we can go over that. This is just some history on the general fund, or the basic per pupil funding we get from the state. The reason that this hasn't changed is because they are going to be hashing that out in the coming legislative session. Okay? And there's just a picture of those same numbers. You can see how it's climbing and then levels off because we don't know next year's yet. Here's the budget that you approved earlier this summer. So you've seen all of this before. Pretty rough. I'm going to look at doing another one now in January just to kind of, there's been several changes, so we'll be looking at that. Our fund balance as of July 1st, 2020, are restricted, it's $182,000, unrestricted, a little over 3.3 million, for a total of a little over 3.5 million. And that's from the audit that we just completed. So you can see there's a picture of those, of the fund balance. We did increase a little bit this past year. So we're holding steady. Just some definitions again. The general fund is used for pretty much everything that the school does. Food service is separated. It can only be used for food service. Like you guys know that we've done fund transfers to help cover some losses in food service, but you have to approve that. I can't just move money between the different funds. So. Community service, same thing, it's separate, and we have to keep that separate unless we have board action to do fund transfers between. That handles all the community service, the early childhood stuff. And then we have debt service, of course, for our bonds and the lease. So here are the levy amounts from this current year and then coming up next year. So you can just kind of see the comparison. It did go down a little bit because we had some enrollment drops from people leaving to do online schooling this year, and that those ADMs were counted in this, projected into next year's levy. So if those students all would come back next year, the state will adjust this by the end of the year, so it would increase based on our per pupil information. Like the operating levy, that's per pupil, so that's why that dropped, because of the loss in enrollment this year. What else is per pupil? Oh, LTFM is another big one, so that just gives you an idea of why it's down a little bit. And there you can see the levy amounts there. The community service levy actually went up slightly because that's not so much based on per pupil. Debt service, same thing. That's all calculated on the bond and that. And the bond actually came in lower than expected, but they already had to put in the amount for last year. So this year they've got it corrected to what it should be now for quite a while. Okay, am I going too fast?
No.
Good? Faster? Okay, so there are just the totals again. You've seen all these numbers on different pages, and then the overall total. So it is down slightly with all the different little categories that are affected by slight loss in enrollment. And it calculates out to about a 10% decrease. For that, hopefully those students come back and it'll all be adjusted again and it'll be fine. But it's nice to have a little fund balance to help us with some of that, if need be. There you go. So, any questions?
Oh, good job.
All right, 5 minutes, Lane.
Maybe a new record. You have to do any switching before we move to the...
No, I don't think so. I think we can just go ahead and jump into the meeting.
No questions, Jesse?
Okay. All right, it's 6:05 PM and I'll call the meeting to order and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, I'll look for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Here we have a motion by Debbie. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Julie. Discussion? Hearing none. In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. No public comment tonight, so we'll move on to the approval of the consent agenda.
Make motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tate. Discussion?
Just wondering, when Marilyn retiring at the end of the year?
Yes, yes.
Okay, then we can thank her then.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Communications report. Tonight we have Ashley with our audit company tonight. Rather than goof up your last name, you can say it if you'd like.
It's Maher.
All right, thank you.
Ignore a lot of the letters.
All right.
Due to COVID restrictions, Carmel's washing tonight the way it looks.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to be going through this presentation that Kim just handed out. Essentially what it is, I've probably said this in the past, but it's a shortened version of these really big, like 70-page reports. So we cut it down quite a bit so we can, kind of go through the most important things and kind of let you know what happened during the year for the school district. So this very first page, the audit process and opinion. So some of you have probably heard this before, but this just basically describes what we do. So we obtain the district's records and we do a number of inquiries, procedures, and testing. And after all of that, we're just looking to issue an opinion. So for the district, we're issuing an unmodified or clean opinion, and that's the opinion that you want to be issued. It means no significant issues, misstatements or errors arose during our audit procedures. Right. This next page, we just list a few other items that we're actually required to report to. Overall, the audit went smoothly. We noted nothing unusual in our transaction review, and also no unusual accounting policies or treatments. The only estimates we report are the actuarial estimates that go into calculating the net pension and the net OPEB liability, and then the MDE receivable estimates. And those are all the same as in the past, and just about every district in the state of Minnesota reports those same estimates. We report just 3 internal control findings, these being the material audit adjustments, the segregation of duties, and the financial statement prep. Really all very common for a district of your size, and also no different than in prior years. Any questions so far? So in our audit procedures, we also take a look at some various areas of Minnesota legal compliance, as noted here. After looking at all the areas noted, we did just have one finding which related to withholding affidavits. So essentially what this is, it's a statement from the vendor that they comply with Minnesota withholding tax requirements. So you get this when you do kind of a bigger project. So for the roofing project, it was obtained after final payment to the vendor. However, per Minnesota statute, it should be obtained before payment. So we know that the vendor's in compliance. No concerns over the vendor that was worked with or anything like that. It's just getting that withholding certificate that'll say that they properly withheld from their wages. And then no other findings other than that one in any of those areas that we looked at. This next page shows your pupil unit. So taking a quick look at this, the district really has seen steady growth over the past 5 years. So for FY19, this was 730 in total, and then FY20, 752. And as Kim mentioned, maybe some fluctuation in the next year, depending on the students who kind of left to do that homeschooling. So taking a look at the numbers, we're going to start off with the general fund. So for FY20, this fund saw an increase in fund balance of $215,000, which includes transfers out to the food service and community service funds, as Kim had talked about. And those transfers out totaled about $479,000. So the ending fund balance for the general fund sat at just over $3.5 million at June 30th, 2020. Compared to FY19, revenues increased while expenditures decreased, kind of what you typically want to see. And then both revenues and expenditures were just slightly over budget there. And then we'll actually take a closer look at these numbers in the next few pages. So looking at revenues first, revenues increased from FY19 to FY20. A lot of that has to do with the pupil unit increase. And here you can kind of see the details there. So the biggest increases we're seeing in property taxes and state aid, which obviously is a lot of the state aid stuff is based on the pupil units. And then other local, you'll notice decrease. And that was primarily, I'm not sure if you recall, but there was a large donation last year for the tennis courts. So that's where that was run through with that other local there. So that's why you're seeing decrease there, kind of normalize it more to that $360,000. And then taking a look at expenditures. So you'll see there's a lot of numbers there obviously, but I'll just roll through a couple of them. So the largest decrease was seen in capital outlay, which decreased by about $600,000 from FY19 to FY20. And this is actually primarily due to that tennis court project that we just talked about. So that's where those expenses go through, is that capital outlay. And then in addition, exceptional instruction actually had an increase in expenditures there, and as did the state aid related to this. So a lot of that exceptional instruction, sometimes that's just based on pupil units, the number of students. And by exceptional instruction, that's mainly special education. So that can fluctuate with pupil units, but in turn, the revenues kind of correspondingly will increase as expenditures increase. Instructional support services increased just primarily due to, I took a look at that, just some technology purchase services, and then just an increase in the salaries coded to that area as well. Taking just a quick look at the cash, really, that's maintained pretty steady over the past few years. And for the general fund, sat at just about $3.7 million at June 30th, 2020. All right, fund balance. This pie chart, obviously all you really see is the blue there. That's that big unassigned fund balance. So there's some different restrictions that are listed there as well. The obviously bulk of the fund balance there is that unassigned fund balance at 3.3 million. And then I'll talk a little bit more about that on this next page. So I kind of tend to talk about this each year because it's kind of a measure of how the general fund is doing and where it sits. So each year we take a look at unassigned fund balance as a percent of budgeted expenditures. So this really saw growth from FY19 to FY20 and sits at about 35%. So the district's policy is for this to sit at or around 20%. And then unassigned, so something to kind of keep in mind here, yes, it seems like a lot, 35% and having, what was it, 3.3 million in unassigned. It's really only a third of a year's expenditures. Granted, you're always gonna have revenues coming through, but it's something to think about. Yes, it's a lot, and you're sitting well above your 20% goal. But I always kind of just remind districts, think about your expenditures for the year. Those are around 9 to 10 million typically for this district. So 3.3 million is not even half of the year. Obviously, you're always going to have revenues coming through to cover some of that, but just something to keep in mind. But that 35% is pretty healthy there. I took a look, and you could spend, just to get you an idea, to get down to the 20%, you could spend about 1.4 million. Obviously, we don't want you to spend all of that, but it's just something to keep your mind on as well. And as in addition, that food service fund and the community service fund have seen some dips in the food service this past year saw a dip in FY20, and I'll talk about that, but community service has typically seen that dip as well. So we've been doing some transfers for that. So that's something to keep in mind too, because with those transfers, you're taking that out of the general fund and then taking that out of that unassigned. Any questions on that? Okay. Taking a look at the remaining funds of the district. So for the building construction fund, obviously this was a new fund this year. So the growth here really is just those bond proceeds that came in. There was some spending, of course, for some design costs and then debt issuance costs as well. But most of that's just that bond proceeds coming in. So not a lot to talk about there yet, of course. And then the next page actually just presents the three remaining funds. So debt service fund increased in FY20 by $30,000. And you'll see that all of these funds had a positive fund balance at year end. You see that other sources line item, that's those transfers that I was talking about from the general fund to those two funds. Prior to transfers, you'll see there was a pretty decent wash in those two funds. It's something to keep in mind. With COVID, a lot of districts are seeing this, so it's not something unique to you necessarily, but especially in the food service fund, it's something that's been happening as well. So that's those couple of funds, and then just to keep an eye on those for the future as well to determine if you'll need to do any additional transfers. And then the cash for those three funds. So food service and community service that have sat relatively the same over the past 4 or 5 years. And then debt service, that big jump in cash there. We actually put just a little bit of the bond proceeds into debt service, and that's per the debt agreement because that will pay the first interest payment on that debt. So that's why that's sitting at 1.2 million, and that'll go out when the first interest payment is made. If I don't know when that is, if it hasn't been done. August. Okay. Perfect. So, and then another thing I wanted to note, this cash graph here doesn't show the building construction fund. It's like 39 million, and it would obviously skew the graph quite a bit if I threw that on here. So I just put a note at the bottom where the cash is sitting at for that fund, of course, and not a ton spent yet because that'll be spent up and coming. All right. And then for the district as a whole, just looking at assets. So overall assets increase, and this is just primarily to those bond proceeds coming in. So you see that current assets, most of that's a growth in cash because those bond proceeds are sitting in cash at 6/30/20. And then capital assets just increased a bit just due to some additions in the current year. Part of that being the design costs, we actually capitalized that for the building construction fund. And then liabilities, kind of a similar thing. So as you look at this, that 2020 bar obviously looks pretty massive. That's just the debt issuance. So that red bar went from 5 million to about 45 million. So that's most of the growth there. And then the other debt, of course, that the district has been being paid off as well. So. And then lastly, this just takes a look specifically at that long-term debt. So your bonds, and then there's just an equipment lease there as well. Obviously, the growth is the new debt being issued. And that is it. My contact information is there. If you have any questions, otherwise I can answer any questions right now too.
It seems like every year we get the segregation of duty. Do you have any like examples or suggestions that we could look at as a district? I know it's common for our size, but just thinking, is there something that maybe you saw that another person could be part of that, whatever process it is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have, almost all of our districts that we work with have that finding. It's pretty common. The thing is that you would have to have probably 5 or 6 people in your accounting department at least to kind of eliminate that, because it, completely segregates the different accounting transaction cycles. That's not to say you can't improve on that. I know you have, certainly, I know that you added a payroll person a couple of years ago, and that there's been some, certain segregation there as well. And then obviously, maybe Kim doing a little bit less as far as some of that goes, but it's really difficult to completely eliminate it. But I've seen some improvement in the past couple of years. So that's something to note. I could probably give Kim as far as like the breakdown of, how much, or how little I suppose each person would do as far as how that would be completely segregated, just to give you an idea as far as what that would take. But yes, it's really difficult to completely eliminate that.
And we have a lot of checks and balances built in. Like, we don't pay a bill unless we've got signatures from somebody else outside the business office and things like that. So we do try to be very careful that at least 2 of us are looking at stuff. So.
Yes, and that's a huge help in just cross-training and having multiple people, know how to do each other's jobs. That helps as well. So if somebody's out, you're having a second eye always on something. That's the biggest thing I always tell, actually all government entities, having somebody else look at, what you're doing, even if it's not every single transaction, but maybe once or twice a month or, once every couple months, just to know that there's somebody watching, I think is a big deal actually, so.
I think a perfect example of that in this district is the money is counted and invoices are taken in different places. And I think about the case in Minnesota several years ago, I think you and I have even talked about this, where in one district, one person took in the money, one person wrote the receipts, and that same person deposited it. And that person, one year, broke a leg and had to go have surgery, so somebody else came in, and all of a sudden the numbers were different. Found out the person was voiding invoices and putting different numbers in for the invoices and pocketing the difference for years and years. So I think that's one example here of the checks and balances that happen in different places, so that was a good example, Kim. Could I just add one or two more things really quick,
Yeah,
Ashley?
absolutely.
That we talked about, Ashley and Kim and I met the other day, and we were talking about, and some of you might remember, several years ago where the state ran out of money. And they couldn't pay, so they went looking for schools who had fund balances to borrow from to pay other schools. And it's nice to be in that position. I think we would be one of them the state would probably borrow from, wouldn't you say, Ashley?
Yep.
And in my report here, I listed out that we are 24 kids, like Kim says, we're short kids that have gone to online school. The state may not pay us for that because they're saying you have rainy day funds. So, since we have a nice unreserved fund balance, they might say you could take care of yourself, but we're only gonna pay back on this. This is not said and done yet, but this is what the legislature's talking about. So, you know, when you were talking about how much money would it take to get to that 20% and paying our bills every month, we'd probably be able to go, what, 3 months, I think you said, 4 months?
Yep.
3.5.
To pay what's just, we have to take care of ourselves, so that's just a kind of a little analogy, if you will, anecdotal stories of some of that money.
Yes, and I think that's something that's important as well, because we don't know what the legislature's gonna do. There's been a lot of, money going out due to COVID. We don't know what's gonna happen in the next year or two as far as aid goes, and, with like this district and other districts losing students to homeschooling, things like that. It's a little bit more up in the air than it's been in the past. I think we don't always exactly know, but maybe more so now than in prior years. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. You don't want to spend all the money that you have, but it's good to know if something does happen that you have that sitting there.
So is the state, would they be, I know in some different state contracts, they can unallot. Can the state unallot a school district?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay.
They can just delay payment to help out their books for the year, I think is the big thing.
Yeah.
And we would be fine, probably we wouldn't have to go borrow like some districts maybe would.
Anything else I can answer?
I just want to say, Ashley, I appreciate working with you.
Yeah.
It's, you're always responsive to our questions and appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, I like working with this district a lot. It was, I've been on it since I started with Sean and Winter actually, and I really appreciate working with Kim and Sherry and really the whole team here. It's always been a good audit. You always think, it's not one of those clients where I'm like, I don't know if I want to go out there. I actually missed being out here this year because we did everything remotely. So it was a little bit disappointing not being able to come out to the district. But fingers crossed that next year we're more normal and we'll be able to come out and visit you guys. So.
I was just gonna say, that was a lot of extra work for Kim too,
Yeah,
having to make
yeah.
copies of everything to send
yeah.
in and refile after she made copies, and
Yep.
so thanks to Kim for that too, appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Ashley.
And thank you, Kim, too, for the great job that you've done. You've got such a good audit, so appreciate it.
All right. We have Jim Trulock here tonight.
Good evening. Excited to be here again. Well, you guys can read through. Number 1 is talking about beginning of practice. As of now, it ends at 11:59 this coming Friday night, where executive order ends as far as not being able to have youth athletics and so on. Now again, I don't know if the governor ended up speaking today. I heard he was going to talk today, but I didn't hear that he did, so I'm thinking now it's
No, it
Wednesday.
wasn't today.
It wasn't today. And then we do have another State High School League meeting on Thursday after we hear what he says to be able to address that. So we just kind of wait to see. If that sticks, then the possibility of us being able to have practice could start as early as Saturday. But again, there's other things involved. State High School League's going to give us direction what they're going to allow. Local district does have control over that, so we would quickly be meeting and trying to see what's best and safest and all those things. So again, up in the air depending on how this week goes with the governor. Let's see here. The State High School League is adamant that they're not going to change the spring season, so to speak. They might change the length of it a little bit depending on what COVID's doing, but as of now, they're saying that since they lost their whole season next year, the winter season is going to continue to be adjusted accordingly as how they need to take care of it, so they don't interfere with spring season. So it may be short in a few weeks, and then they'll just allow more games. But the way they're talking now, and again, which we know can change anytime, the way they're talking now, they're going to allow us to have our full events like softball. They're allowed 20, games, and baseball and so on. So that's what their intent is right now. Let's see. And with that, again, basketball will adjust accordingly. So that's what number 3 is about. The State High School League has 3 different modules in place right now, trying to be prepared as far as what if now this gets moved back to June 6th, so to speak, or what if it's June 15th. So they're doing some preparation and giving us some ideas about where to go. Some of the ADs in our conference are just deciding let's stop rescheduling, because we reschedule, and we're pretty fortunate because we didn't have a lot of activities real early, so for the boys' schedule, I actually only had 4 activities scheduled before Christmas break. And I have 3 of those 4 rescheduled already at this time later on in the season. They're also leaving the green space, they call it, to where this is a week that they could start playoffs a little bit earlier, or we could move the rest of the season or the end of the season a little longer. But they do plan on having playoffs. They may really cram it in. They've made that clear that there may not be a lot of relaxing. It might be Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They don't know yet until they know when we start. But they do plan on having that. And I will say they're not throwing the possibility of state tournaments out yet. So they haven't said absolutely no to that. Again, all this obviously depends on what's going on with COVID. One thing that I missed was the section tournaments will not be at neutral sites this year like we usually go to Montevideo, usually go to Southwest State. Everything is going to be at the high seed. Whoever we play individually, it'll just be 2 teams. So it's not that the number 1 seed gets all the events. It's if it's 5 and 6 are playing, or 4 and 5 are playing, 4 is going to host that event, and so on. And that'll be all the way through to the finals. So again, if we'd make it to the finals in the section, and we'd be the top seed in Southwest Christian, they would drive all the way to McRae and play us here, and vice versa. Let's see. Number 5, well, just thank you for approving the coaches. Again, I'm doing shorter lists because I don't know what's going on and when things are being done and what's starting and what's not. So as we get a little more, as we decide when things are starting, that's why you're going to continue to get them each month, I think. Number 6, since we lost the junior high boys basketball season, at that point, we met last week. 6 of us, I think, 5 or 6 of us in the conference in the north section. It's just not fair. We don't want the kids just to have to go do club ball. So rather than interfere, the boys junior high always goes first, but this year we're not going to interfere with the girls' schedule other than shortening it a week. And so we're going to let the girls' schedule go as it's been scheduled, and then we're going to do a 6-week boys season right after that. 1 week of practice, and then we'll do a couple games a week. We're going to try to do a home and away of each one of those schools that are doing the same thing. So each group of kids is going to hopefully get 10 games if everybody stays healthy and able to participate and stuff like that. So that's the intention at this time. I'm going to talk to Aubrey Ross, emailed with Aubrey Ross last week. As soon as she's able to get started doing something, she does. She's going to come back, and if time allows, she's still going to record the fall play that took the place of the spring play, that's usually that took the place of the musical. And she still plans on trying to do some kind of recording and putting that out there, but as soon as she's able to start having tryouts and things like that, she's going to move forward with One Act Play. And the State High School League does have One Act Play events scheduled for this time. May end up being all virtual, but it's, again, work in progress. And then I think you guys got probably 5 more pages. One of the coaches, Eric Martins from the State High School League, you guys last time asked for more information, how they came up with the fee structure. They did make some adjustments, so they did listen to the smaller schools and decide that it wasn't quite fair. I added a couple more things that I don't believe was out in the public. That was page 3 and 4. And that was just to give you an example. They split each class in the 3 groups. That they took the largest 5 schools of enrollment, the middle, and then the lowest 5. And we really can't look at enrollment, because when you're looking at enrollment, those kids aren't all participating in activities. So the best column to look at is the one to the right, total per activity. And if you saw the top 5 in class 4A there, they pay $508.05. And then on the next page, you'll see that's per activity. And then on the next page, and I'm not sure which one we are, if we're the middle 5 or the bottom 5. Our enrollment, 10, 11, and 12 is 133 after they figure free and reduced and so on. Even our enrollment's quite a bit higher than that. That's the number the State High School League uses. And you'll see, I think we're the bottom 5 of 5A, or bottom 5 in Class A, and there we pay $525.46. So it isn't a real large difference from what the largest schools in the state are paying per activity. So Sherry wanted me to put together a 25-30-minute presentation on that, but I shut it down a little bit. Is there any questions, or are there any questions?
Any questions for Jim?
Did you figure out the percentage difference? I think that's one thing that we talked about, like the percentages versus the numbers. I think that was one of the things that we were looking at some equity in.
I didn't, and I can't remember what you wanted exactly. Can you explain it again, and I'll see if I can do it.
Well, it made sense at the time, you know.
Well, we had talked about the percentages in the State High School League dropped back, and there was a difference of 12 and 20. Is that what you're talking, or are you talking about participation?
No, our percentage of what we were going to pay was much higher than some of the, as a smaller school, was much higher than some of the larger schools. And I just wondered how that played out with their reduction that they made.
It did. If you look at page 2, that explains the sizes. And they ended up breaking, I think originally it was just in 3, and they broke this down to 6 different sizes. And so I didn't have the percentages, but the numbers back on page 3 and 4 show virtually the same thing if you pay per sport. Because again, in some ways it really doesn't matter if we have 10 kids out for it, if you have 100 kids out for it, we still have to, we have to pay for that sport to be able to offer it, or that activity, I should say, not just sport. It also includes One Act Play and things like that.
And we fall into that, the number of 138 schools. Would you say 113?
We have 133.
33,
Yeah.
okay, so we're just here.
So you see that, that's why I wasn't really sure. I highlighted 2 of them because the top, the middle 5 there go from 145 to 148, and then the bottom 5 go from 102 to 103. So we're kind of in the middle of those 2. That's why I highlighted the 2 numbers to the right one, 562 and 525.
Then I think we asked about, like, have they made reductions?
Yes, our reductions went down to,
So I mean, in
You talking
their
about staffing?
what significant reductions have they made, and were they able to participate in the PPP program?
Yes, and 17, I believe they cut 17 people. Wasn't it a staff of 17
you
or
know what, I
27?
can't, the numbers, when they were throwing out percentages, they were,
Yeah.
it's kind of at a meeting, so it's not like I'm getting
Yeah,
exact
but
numbers.
I read somewhere that was I think it was 17, Debbie.
Okay.
And then, what was your other question?
They were waiting, or the people, I just ran across 530,000 are waiting for That's what their PPP is. They're waiting for forgiveness on that, it says on the second page.
Okay. So they did receive that to help pay for some of the staff.
If that's the second to the last paragraph.
Yeah, I don't know, I printed a part of it off, that's,
So PPP, they could have asked for their complete salaries, correct?
I don't know that for sure.
I think it
They
was
could have asked for all of
complete
that.
salaries, including benefits, and then 25% of your space costs in relationship to the overall. Like you say, you apply for $100,000, only 25% of that could go towards space, rent, utilities, things like that. The rest, you wanted it to go to salaries, so, okay.
Thinking, the big plus here is these pages 1 and 2, well, actually all 4 pages, this definitely explains a lot more than just getting the bill in the mail. And that they did make some adjustments and brought us back between $700 and $800. So it is something.
So kind of where the rubber meets the road, then what additional funds will we be paying to them if we choose to do that?
It's roughly $4,300 for, it's a little less than that,
4317.
There we go.
more than that.
And I didn't know if that was inclusive of our initial payment or that was over and above.
Well, it's 2,500 and then 1817 on the second one.
Yeah, 4317 is the total.
Yep,
Yeah.
The total of everything, the
Yes.
initial, and then
Yes,
yep.
it came down from the 5,000 then. So.
yeah.
All right, any other questions for Jim? If not, thanks Jim for coming in tonight. Judd's gonna present on the,
Judd and Melissa are both gonna present, because
Okay.
they worked on this in tandem, so
Yep.
together they're
okay.
gonna.
We're gonna both present this, we'll see how it works, one's distance and one's in person here.
Judd with us? Hello.
Hi, Sherry.
Hey, you just woke him up.
She happens to say that to me a lot, so I'm used to responding with that. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and my apologies if there's a little bit of a lag between me talking and Melissa talking. So anything comes up, let me know. All right, so do you have the data presentation up?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, beautiful. All right, well, I'm going to kick everything off here a little bit, I think, because the first few slides are pretty heavy on the elementary data. And so we've got our yearly data presentation for you. This is an interesting one because it's combining the world's best workforce and the achievement and integration plan. So things have changed a little bit. Melissa, do you want to speak as to that combination at all? Do you have any info?
Sure. Actually, this is the second year in a row now that World's Best Workforce and A&I have been combined in a single report for the board. And there's also a combined form that we get to do with MDE. So we just submitted the World's Best Workforce and Achievement Integration progress report this morning. And you'll see as we go through the presentation, we're ending year 3 with our A&I. A&I is a 3-year, we set a goal for 3 years and then you adjust and make a new goal. So you'll see that we're wrapping up year 3 and we've just also submitted last week the final tweaks to the new A&I report for fiscal year 20 to 23. So we'll talk about that in the report too.
Doing the right thing here. Bear with me. There we go. First thing we need to acknowledge is the COVID-19 impact on the report. We did get the waiver from MDE for the MCA testing for the year. And so you're going to notice that we have unable to report in a number of areas, which we just don't have the data to be able to share with you. So unfortunately, we're going to be moving forward based off of 2 years ago, the data that we have on that information. So some of it's updated, some of it's not, so bear with us. The first part of World's Best Workforce is all students ready for school. And so this is real heavy into our preschool information. If you remember from the presentation last year, preschool definitely was rocking and rolling. And very happy to say that while we had a goal of 95%, we exceeded the 95% goal on all and met 95% on one other. So we did not fall below 95% in any of our categories, with language being the only one that we were at the 95% threshold, and then going up from there. So very happy that that our preschool is doing such a good job at preparing our kids for kindergarten.
And I would add that this is current and up-to-date data. We had an easier time of it when we were allowed to use our local assessment data because we did measure this last year. So that's why we have up-to-date information on this particular slide.
The next transition we have is going into the world of reading, which, as all of you know, has become a particular passion of mine, and so happy to share this information with you. You can see the trend that we've been going through a decrease for the most part since 2015, which, if you remember, is why what really spurred my my interest in trying to figure out what the problem was, what we can do to right the ship and get things headed in the right direction. So again, just as a reminder, since we do not have the data to report from last school year, that we just the percent proficient, they're shared with you. As we go through our reading proficiency, you can see what our goals for 21 are. And so it goes, again, it varies because it's going from the previous year, now previous 2 years. So we're looking at 72% for grade 3, 70% for grade 4, 84 for grade 5, and 74% for grade 6. And then just going through 7th, 8th, and 10th, we've got 63%, 68%, and 78%.
And what the state wants here is for all grades to be 90% proficient by the year 2025, with no subgroup less than 85% proficient. And so, you know, this goal has been in place for a while, so we've calculated the difference and, you know, how many percent it's going to take us to get to 90%, and that's how you see the differing percentages that we have to come up with for the goal. And as of right now, you know, the U.S. Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, states that we are going to have state tests this spring nationwide. We don't know that to be true at this point. That could change, but we felt it was important still to have these goals in place because as of now, we don't know if there's going to be state testing or not this spring.
And one thing I'd really like to acknowledge, I'm sorry, am I cutting somebody off?
Oh, sure. Debbie asked thoughts about the blip in 7th and 8th grade. That is kind of like the auditor was mentioning earlier with kind of being able to split the duties with auditors in the business department. It's kind of the same thing with 7th and 8th grade. You'll see that trend statewide. You will see it in all the area schools. For whatever reason, there's a dip between that 6th and 7th and 8th grade. So it's a common occurrence. And one of the things I'm hoping that's going to help in our situation is when we get our building built and we have a true middle school concept, and then we can focus really on that 6th, 7th, and 8th. I would say in our building, probably one of the biggest things or our district, probably one of the biggest things that hangs us up is our 6th graders are not in the same building with us. So once we can increase that communication and bridge that between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers, I think we will see that improve.
And I, as a former English teacher, I can attest to the fact that you're really literacy heavy in your elementary grades. And then once you make that transition to middle school, you start throwing in media literacy and more speech stuff, and it gets heavy. So the focus on literacy isn't as great. So it makes sense that as you're getting into more literary terms and those kinds of things, that you do end up seeing a bit of a decline just as the transition happens. I also would like to point out that that Mrs. Sparks and I did meet with Susan Burris, who was the liaison for MDE with the World's Best Workforce. We met with her, I believe it was 2 falls ago, if I remember correctly. Is that true, Melissa?
I believe so.
And the one thing that she said that was really refreshing is that the state recognizes that the World's Best Workforce goals that were set previous were, I believe she referred to them as being aspirational, meaning that it was something that somebody else had set that standard and it wasn't up to the district. And she had encouraged us to change the goals so that they were more relevant for our situation and for our kids. And I think that's something that we did a good job of reflecting more for what we need to see out of our staff and our kids. Jumping into math now. Again, you can see the percentages from the previous 6 years, with 2020 being unable to report again because of the lack of MCA scores. And then the proficiency goals we have for 2021, going 78. Well, you know what? I don't need to rattle off. You guys can see what they say. Melissa, are you aware of what the percentage is for the 2025 again?
It's the same thing, it's 90%. With no subgroup less than 85%.
And now we'll move into some of the A&I information.
Okay, so the A&I first of all stands for Achievement and Integration, and we are a part of a group of school districts with Wilmer, New London, Spicer, ACGC, and Montevideo was in it voluntarily. And the reason that we get to be a part of the A&I is that we're an adjoining district to Wilmer, and it has to do with racial isolation. So that's why we're a part of that, and we were able to reach those A&I dollars. When we wrote this 3 years ago, it used to be that the districts participating had to have a common goal. And so back at the time when this was first written in 2017, the common goal between all of the schools was to reduce the achievement gap with 8th grade math between the free reduced lunch and the non-free reduced lunch. Because that was a common goal we could all agree on that we needed to work on. So this is something where this year we were unable to report the data because we didn't have MCA testing. We have a goal for this spring. So far, we've been unsuccessful in meeting this goal and closing the gap. This is again part of the World's Best Workforce. So this is now not a part of A&I, so we're kind of shifting back into World's Best Workforce. That all students are college and career ready by graduation. So our goal was for the last school year for all 11th grade students to increase their average ACT score by 1 point. And last year we were not able to test the juniors because of COVID. So we were unable to make that report for you. To tell you though that this year's senior class, they were able to take the test this October. So while we can't line up the data, they thankfully did have an opportunity to finally take the ACT test. This is our college and career readiness data. The state only requires us to have the previous goal that you saw. You just need to have one goal. But we've added a number of other goals. So we reported that in, I see I have a typo there. I should have changed the heading on the left-hand column. On the left-hand, or on the right-hand column. On the left-hand side, it says 63.5% of 2020 graduates will earn college credit while in high school, and in actuality we had 85.7% earn college credit. And so, and we're reporting a year, I didn't think about this, so it's 85% the class of 2020, so it should say 2020 on the right-hand side. 86% of McRae graduates in 2020 will be enrolled in a post-secondary or join the military. That was our goal. We have 96.4% enrolled So we've met that goal, that's a 2020 goal there. And then we had a goal of 62% having an English score, a benchmark of 18 or higher. And the reason we chose that as a goal is because if you score an 18 or higher in the ACT English portion, it means that you have the college readiness skills to do well in college. And right now, we fell short of that. We had 35% in the class of 2020 meet that benchmark, meaning that those students had a goal of 18 or higher.
May I interject something that I think is super important here? In light of COVID, you know, where it says CTE there, traditional, Melissa and I have had conversations about the importance of getting our CTE vocational kids into school. Now, I'm stepping back from World's Best Workforce and A&I for just a second to tell you that we decided, and Melissa reached out to Ben and Kayla, and figured out a way to get those kids into school while we're in distance learning. On Mondays are what the teachers wanted to do, right? And then they divided the class, already kind of small sized classes because they have to be that way anyway, in half again. So for example, small engines, they came in one Monday, half of them, applied their small engine skills to a project they were working on. I think that's fantastic. Us and Benson are two schools in the area that have said to our CTE kids, you need the training and you need to be prepared to graduate here to work in these fields.
Yep.
So I know it doesn't have anything to do with World's Best Workforce, maybe it does, but to us it was important. So I just wanted to share that with you. Today they were back in again, another group of small engines kids.
Okay. I'm looking at this data here. Okay, so the previous slide, I should delete it. Here's the right slide here. So, sorry, I was working off of two, Jen and I were working separately here. So here, 77% of the class will complete at least one job shadow. That was our goal. 72% of them actually did it. And so I think that's really good considering COVID hit in March. And so the fact that we got 72% to do a job shadow and our goal was 77%, I thought was really pretty good. So 63.5% was our goal for 2020 grads to earn college credit. The actual was 86%. We had 86% was our goal that they be enrolled in some kind of post-secondary job or join the military, and we had exactly that. And our ACT benchmark still sits there. We're still struggling to increase that ACT benchmark in English so that we show a higher percentage being college ready. One of the things that I think will help that ACT benchmark in English is consistency in the English department. So if you look at, for example, this year's seniors, I was trying to count the other day. They had, their 9th grade teacher was just here for a year. Their 10th grade teacher was here for a semester and we filled the rest of the year. And so, you know, we're in the process of building the English department, and I think now we've got 4 instructors in place, and so I think that's going to make a difference. We're going to see those numbers increase. All students graduate. So Minnesota's goal is to have no student group below 85%. McRae, you know, is doing well here. We had 96.6% of the McRae class of 2019 graduate on time. So the state reports in 2 different ways. They report how many graduate within 4 years, and then they do another data point and they say how many graduate within 7 years of starting 9th grade. But we blew it out of the water for the class of 2019, 96.6% graduated. 2020 data is not yet posted to MDE's website. We're currently 12.9% above the state average in graduation rate, so we can be super proud of that. And our current goal for the class of 2021 is to have at least 95% of the students graduate. Okay, this is the new Achievement and Integration Plan. So this went into effect July 1, 2020. You as a board approved this back in March of 2020 at the March board meeting. We did have to make a couple tweaks to it this fall, and the tweaks to be made was they wanted baseline data to go with each of our goals. So that is the tweak that was made. One change too, as I said, in our previous plan in 17 to 20, we had to have a common goal with Wilmer and the other adjoining districts. This time we can do more of our own thing. So the focus in the next 3 years is grades 1 through 6. So, Jared, do you want to talk about this part, or do you want me to keep talking?
Yeah, I can talk about this a bit. So we have, again, within this goal, we're looking at the free reduced lunch population. And that is the group that as a target for things like title, that's the group that's typically looked at. And so when you're looking at the support that we're going to be providing for these goals within grades 1 through 6, a title is addressing it, number one, and number two, we also are using the dollars from A&I to pay for our intervention coach position that we have that is currently filled by Julie Deacon. And so her position is made available through the funds so that she can support classroom teachers in finding interventions so that the teachers aren't having to take the time to find the interventions for the certain kids that they need to work with. And at the same time, when necessary, she will do some more intense interventions as needed. And so it's been interesting as we've been in distance learning to see with her time, she actually has a full schedule every single day to work with students on interventions so that the classroom teachers can focus more on their distance learning teaching. And so this is a really, really good way to use those funds to make the max benefit for our kids and for our staff. Move on?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so the other part of the A&I is that we have to have a goal on teacher equity and access to effective teachers. So what we have there is that students will have access to teachers who are thoroughly trained in delivering standards-based instruction to increase student achievement. So that's the work that we've done in the past 2 years, working with Learning Sciences International to teach students teachers how to unpack their standards and write learning targets and develop success criteria for each standard. And so all students will have equitable access to teachers skilled at delivering standards-based instruction. And so in looking at our data for some baseline data, with turnover and staff and kind of where we're sitting, we have 84% of the current staff trained and implementing standards-based lessons with learning targets and success criteria. Our goal is to get that to 100% of teachers by the spring of 2023. So the importance
and looking for that is something that both Melissa and I do when we go in for our observation. So we're looking for those parameters that were outlined within the LSI training so that we can continue to see that it is happening in the classrooms.
Yes, absolutely. And we're looking for things like, does the standard they state in their lesson really address what they're teaching? Would be one of the things that we look for. This next one is the integration goal, and it has to do with all racial and academic achievement gaps between students are closed. This one does tie with the other districts. It says students who attend summer programming will self-report an increase in their level of ability to develop relationships with peers outside of the regular school day, including peers different from themselves. So this is our students having an increased opportunity to interact with students with more diversity than we have in our own school system. And so our baseline data is that roughly 16% of our students and 42% of Wilmer and the other adjoining districts attended STEM camp in the summer of 2019. And STEM camp was not offered in the summer of 2020 due to COVID. But that, you know, having our students working together in a STEM activity, which is the activity that the group chose, gives us a greater opportunity to work on increasing our students, engaging with students from different diverse populations. Whoops.
I'm sorry?
Oh, we just had a little tech problem here.
The board went to sleep on us. Not the physical people. The other one.
Good one.
Might have.
Yeah. I thought I heard Jim snoring back there.
Hint, hint, hint.
Will it be in bed, Jesse?
Nope. It'll be back here.
Oh, we all know.
Otherwise I could do mine while it.
I believe that's our last slide, if I remember right.
Yeah, you wanna drag them over?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Just
Okay.
that, or,
The,
good.
the information I was sharing isn't on a slide, but the state's desire for diverse teachers being in all school districts has gotten to a point to where I was telling Melissa the other day that I received a survey, and the things that they list as far as attracting diverse staff include things like loan forgiveness, grow your own programs out of staff, grow your own programs out of your kids, and as well as having hiring incentives. And so when we're as as three communities in one, we're looking at right around 95 to 97% white. The diversity isn't necessarily abundant within the communities, and so the state recognizes that outstate schools do have difficulties at attracting and hiring diverse, highly qualified staff. So that's something you're probably going to be hearing about quite a bit more in the coming years.
Okay. So that's our presentation. So do you have questions for Judd or for me?
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for all the work putting that all together. That's.
You're welcome. And it gets confusing because it's hard to remember what year you're working in because you're always reporting 1 year behind.
Yep.
So.
Thank you too, Judd.
You bet.
Tate, I should ask, I have to list committee members on my report, and you were serving on the committee last time, so I listed you again. Are you okay with it?
Sounds good.
Okay, good.
That's all we
Good,
talked
thank you, Tate.
So, all right, thanks. Sherry.
All right, I'm gonna skip over the things that have already been talked about. Number one, Jim covered that one. Number two, you probably saw in your packet, a courtesy letter, I'm calling it, to the mayors and city council members of Raymond and Maynard, indicating the potential sale of properties in Raymond and Maynard. And I just was hoping to propose that Debbie and Tate might both be able to work with me on that committee. And you know what the goal is to bring this up now is to give people plenty of time to think about options if they're interested in purchase of the properties. We'll take our time to get through this carefully and make sure everybody knows what is available. Right now, the status on this is both properties have been surveyed, and that information is now in the hands of our school attorney for real estate, and they're trying to work out a couple of just a couple of parcels that have some conflict on them. So, but yeah, I just want to be very willing to work with both communities and both councils, both mayors, and make sure they have time, like I said, to think through this whole process. So Debbie and Tate wouldn't mind working on those groups. That'd be great. Judd and Melissa presented on World's Best Workforce. I talked about the kids. McCray has 24 kids that are either homeschooled or online. Number 5 is that reduction in quarantine and isolation time, even since I wrote this last week. I just read something from MDE today that says that, yeah, we can. They don't recommend it. It's not the best recommendation, but they would allow people to work through this reduced rate. But Judd and Melissa and I and our school nurse, we have got to get together on this. Laura estimated it's going to increase her work time by about 50%. And she's already working all the time. But we'll do it. We'll monitor this and our guidance on that, and I'll let you know as time goes on. When to come back to school, the big question. The really big question. You know, personally as McCray, we've had a death, a COVID death, very close to us, and this weekend, actually 2 of them. And we probably all know people or have close experience with that. Our numbers in Chippewa and Candiac counties are not going down. I'm hoping to get together with our advisory committee this week or next week to let them know what the numbers look like, what are the ramifications for us. Work closely with Jim on when is the pause, the governor pause, going to be over for sports, and take all that into consideration and how we come back in. Number 7, I've been asked to sit on this statewide task force you've heard me talk about before. It's ancient history that we blew by that 50 number. What do? We should all be in distance learning when we get to 50 in the county. Well, that was a long time ago. So we're working on what kind of matrices, what kind of rubrics, what kind of flow chart, what kind of guidelines, what kind of health guidelines can we use to help guide us back into school when the time is right. Again, waiting for the governor. Everybody's waiting for the governor. And legislature in terms of finance, and we sure would like to get some more money from the legislature, just just to help pay for our people we've hired for COVID. And finally, I appreciate that Melissa is willing to run to represent McCray and rural Minnesota. I believe strongly when you sit on a group like my sitting on this task force group, you have a direct pipeline to what is needed in your community, in your school district in this case. And hear firsthand what's happening at the legislature and those kinds of things. So that's good. Any questions for me?
Just to share, I've been on a conference call, and it was good news that the state deficit isn't as much as they thought it, not 2 million, it's only 1.2 million, but that the state does have to have, by statute, a balanced budget. So even, look out for cuts straight across the board is what kind of they're saying, so.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
All right, thanks, Sherry.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to business items. 8.1.
I'll make a motion to approve 8.1.
We have a motion by Scott, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tate. Discussion? Hearing none, in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. 8.2.
I'd just like to make a motion if we could table this for a couple months. I'd like to see the language of this letter cleaned up a little bit so that it really reflects what we talked about as a board. It pretty much says in here that the buildings will be sold. It doesn't say potentially or perhaps. But we've always talked about it. What was sent in the review and comment was the demolition. And so how do we reword that? Because right now it doesn't even talk about that in here.
Yeah, I read that too, and I made copies of them to, thanks for bringing that up, but I didn't know if there's a reason that our attorney wrote this letter for
Right.
us, right?
Right.
And I don't know what if they want to sound to, I have no idea.
Yeah,
I have
you know,
no idea.
I'd be more than happy to take it back and indicate that, to reflect more of the review and comment you're saying, Debbie?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't talk about demolition in there, because I mean, that's, I guess, right, that's the next step, they'll be demoed and it'll still be sold, but I guess if you want to put demolition in there, I
What do you
mean,
mean it will be sold?
we're gonna sell the property, other than the ball fields. We're not gonna keep any, as far as I know. I didn't think we were.
Well, but we talked about in previous meetings is that we weren't going to sell it. And I thought that was what we had consensus, that it was gonna be demolished, because we didn't wanna leave those two communities with what.
Right, I mean, we
That's right.
demolish them and then sell what's left.
But that's not what this says.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah,
and maybe
so-
I
Yeah,
misunderstood.
so I think we maybe just need to have a little
Yeah.
bit more clarification in the letter then, maybe.
Perfect.
Okay.
And maybe you and Tate, this is a way for us three to
Yeah,
start.
that'd be great. Yeah, that'd
Okay.
be great.
Okay.
Okay, so,
So can I make a motion to just to table it and we
Yep.
can come back to the board maybe, I don't know, January
Sure.
or whatever, and,
I think January will give us time to meet and talk to
Yeah.
her again.
yep, okay, we have a motion by Debbie to table the motion, is there a second?
I'll second
Seconded by Tate, any more discussion? Table till January?
sure. And then just wondering, they have not reached out to the Lutheran Church yet, so did they find the documents that they were looking for?
Did the surveyor and the attorney?
Yeah,
I don't know that yet. I think it was gonna kind of, here's the
okay,
things to
Okay.
deal with. And I know that you guys found it at your church.
yeah, yeah,
So, you know, I'm kind of looking at it as, okay, if we're talking about the east building, let's start taking one piece at a time and resolve one piece at a
Yeah.
time.
yeah.
So that'll be an easy one, I think.
Well, and maybe it wasn't filed right, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did find the paperwork, I guess, so.
Good.
So maybe,
I will let
maybe the
her
rest of
know
the
that.
board doesn't know, but it looked like half of the church was school property.
Yeah.
And they found where the paperwork was that said the church actually purchased that portion of it, so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Do you have some, Tate? No. Okay, all right. All right, any other discussion? Well, is hearing none, in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. 8.3,
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for combined polling places for 2021 as presented.
all right, we have a motion by Julie, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Scott. Julie, can you read that resolution for us, please? Maybe Scott thought he had to read it, that's
That's
why.
why I waited, why I was waiting. Resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 2180, State of Minnesota as follows. Number one, pursuant to Minnesota Statute, Section 205A.11, the precincts and polling places for school district elections are those precincts or parts of precincts located within the boundaries of the school district which have been established by the cities or towns located in whole or in part within the school district. The board hereby confirms those precincts and polling places so established by those municipalities. Number two, pursuant to Minnesota Statute, Section 205A.11, the board may establish a combined polling place for several precincts for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election. Each combined polling place must be a polling place that has been designated by a county or municipality. The following combined polling places are established to serve the precincts specified for all school district special and general elections not held on the same day as a statewide election. Combined polling place, McCray West Elementary, 700 Agnes Avenue in Maynard, Minnesota. This combined polling place serves all territory in Independent School District Number 2180, located in the city of Maynard, Crate Township, Havelock Township, Leanthorpe Township, Grace Township, Lauriston Township, Granite Falls Township, Stoneham Township, and Wang Township in Chippewa or Renville County, Minnesota. combined polling place, McCray East Elementary, 309 Day Street in Raymond, Minnesota. This combined polling place serves all territory in Independent School District number 2180, located in the City of Raymond, St. Johns Township, Edwards Township, Holland Township, Wilmer Township, Whitefield Township, City of Wilmer, in Chippewa or Kansas County, Minnesota. Combined polling place, McCray High School, 711 Wolverine Drive, Clare City, Minnesota. This combined polling place serves all territory in Independent School District number 2180, located in the City of Clare City, Woods Township, Lone Tree Township, and Ryderland Township of Chippewa County, Minnesota. Note, see section 2.3.2 of the election manual regarding changing polling places in case of an emergency or if the polling place is no longer available. Number 3, pursuant to Minnesota statute section 2058.09, the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the same day as a statewide election between the hours of 2 o'clock p.m. and 8 o'clock p.m. Note, see section 3.6 of the election manual regarding certain restrictions on voting hours. Number 4, the clerk is directed to file a certified copy of this resolution with the county auditors of each of the counties in which the school district is located, in whole or in part within 30 days after its adoption. Number 5, as required by Minnesota statute, section 204B.16, subdivision 1A, the clerk is hereby authorized and directed to give written notice of new polling place locations to each affected household with at least one registered voter in the school district. The school district polling place location has been changed. The notice must be a non-forwardable notice mailed at least 25 days before the date of the first election to which it will apply. A notice that is returned as undeliverable must be forwarded immediately to the appropriate county auditor, who shall change the registrant status to challenged in a statewide registration system. If a combined polling place is changed, the change must be adopted at least 90 days prior to the first election where it will be used, unless that polling place has become unavailable for use.
All right, thanks, Julie. Any other discussion? Or any discussion, I should say. Hearing none, it's a roll call vote. Tate?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Debbie?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Resolution is adopted, passed and adopted. All right, 8.4.
I'll make a motion to approve and certify the 2020 payable 2021 property tax levy.
We have a motion by Julie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Seconded by Scott. Discussion. Hearing none, in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. 8.5.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 Minnesota State High School League fees.
Okay, we have a motion by Scott. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Julie. Discussion. I did talk to Carmel today, and she's in favor of this motion, just to pass that on. Jim?
I was gonna tell you one more thing. They haven't thrown a threat out or anything like that, but if we would choose not to do it, they would have the ability to not allow us to participate in the section events and meets. As early as this basketball season too.
And with them doing a little bit of, adjusting, I guess.
Right. And again, they have not threatened that. It's just always something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah. But I mean, I think they've tried a little bit, so it's better than it was.
Well, I appreciate that they listened and they took action, so.
Okay. Any other discussion? Otherwise, hearing none, in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. 8.6.
I'll make a motion to approve 8.6.
Okay, we have a motion by Tate. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Debbie. To approve the world's best workforce report. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. 8.7.
Just for clarification, before I'll make the motion, is that moving forward, we will not have in-person meetings? It says all meetings will be electronically.
Well, with the exception that either Lane or I have to be here and Kim, most boards are saying just we're not meeting here. But I think if people want to come, they can. But what happened tonight was Carmel wasn't available, so she can't participate. If this would have happened under this guideline, she could have been virtual and participated. Or do we have Kim?
This allows us to do it in person, and if somebody needs to be gone, virtually as well.
Without advertising it, you mean?
Well,
Correct,
it's-
without
yeah.
the 72 hour, 73 hour notice,
So
yes.
then I'm gonna make the motion, but I will take the word all out of there. I will just say the motion until further notice that special and regular board meetings can be held both electronically and in person. Simultaneously. Does that make sense?
Both electronically and in person.
So we'll just add and in person after electronically? And or in
I'd
person?
like and or instead of just.
Yeah.
and.
Yeah, yeah. These are kind of covered.
Okay,
'Cause
yeah, that works.
Simultaneously,
We were trying
right?
to mirror the statute 13D.021 in our writing of this today, and it just came up this afternoon,
yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And thanks for adding this because,
What's that?
thanks for adding this because I asked Kim about it and then you already had it done, so.
So then
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's not a public place then anymore either, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah, gets rid of those restrictions, it sounds like. right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Well, I'll second it. Are you gonna make that motion, Debbie? You already did?
Sorta.
All right, I'll
Okay.
second it.
After all the other.
I'll read it. How I wrote it and then you guys can tell me how it really should be, but we have a motion by Debbie, seconded by Julie, to approve until further notice, all special and regular board meetings will meet electronically and or in person under Minnesota State Statute 13D.021.
And just change the and/or / just to and,
Okay,
so that they're held simultaneously
Okay.
in both
electronically and in person.
and in person.
Well, except that if there's a snowstorm or something and nobody can come in, then it would be
Well, that's
all
true.
electronically then. Yeah,
So, or not
I
or,
think you need the and or to.
Okay.
and
Are you
or,
okay with that, Scott?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
and or.
And you had originally said both, we'll meet both electronically under, right, didn't you?
Yeah, that we'd be meeting, we have
Both
both
electronically
options for people
and
to
or
meet.
in person, so take out the both because we're putting simultaneously in.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Where'd you put simultaneous? I didn't have that in there.
After, we'll meet electronically and or in person simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that
That
makes
says
sense.
it.
Yes?
Is that okay, Debbie?
Yeah, I think-
And Julie? You
We'll meet
guys?
simultaneously in person and or you were
Yeah.
saying again?
Okay.
I
Special
think
and
just saying
regular.
Minnesota statute 13D.021 is the explanation, but,
But this, the way it's written right now makes it sound like we're only gonna meet electronically.
I know.
Yeah.
That's
And
my
I think
point.
you're trying to get rid of that.
Right.
Say you
Right.
can do both, or, yeah.
You can have them both.
may I just read this first paragraph here?
Yep.
Then you guys read along and see if it says what the statute says. First, it says MSBA recommends school board continue to provide remote access and include this in its meeting notices as provided under Minnesota statute. This approach allows board members, staff, and/or members of the public whose health conditions or those of the people close to them prevent them from attending an in-person meeting to participate in or watch board meetings. So, yeah,
That sounds like the right thing, when you read the whole statute. They're not saying it has to be one or the other. They're just giving people the option to
Right.
remotely view the meeting. I think that's what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah, we want, like Carmella tonight,
Right.
Right, and if we
Gotta
just say all, then none of us would be here. If we said, if we went with this, how it's written here.
Right, because they don't say all in that statute.
so.
So we're just approving the statute, basically.
Yeah, can we just approve that statute?
Well, the,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah.
the statute is in the back of your packet. She's reading the MSBA kind of explanation of
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
So-
just think I want to make sure that we can do both.
Yeah,
On the same evening, have people in person, or if they, like Carmel could Zoom in then.
yeah, because they talk about even one member of the body must be there unless unfeasible due to health or pandemic or emergency declaration, so all that's covered.
Mhm.
Would it say, to approve until further notice, all special and regular board meetings will be held.
Will be,
It'll be held both electronically.
be held under the provisions of Minnesota Statute 13.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, say that again?
Will be held,
That statute says only telephone and electronic,
No, they're saying it just should be always offered as an option,
at least to one person.
unless, yeah, it says at least one person unless unfeasible due to health, pandemic, or emergency declarations.
Deb and Julie, how would you guys say how you guys
Well-
made the motion?
It says the number 2, I think, is the key. All members of the body participating in the meeting, wherever their physical location, can hear. So that's
Okay.
kind of saying wherever they are.
Yeah,
If they're
got
all
it,
here,
right,
if
yep,
some are at
yeah.
home, some are here.
Go to subdivision 4.
At least one member of the
Four.
body.
And
Yeah.
that's what,
Some members may participate
Right.
yep,
from that meeting from outside.
Yeah,
it says at least one member.
okay, X-Man just approved the statute.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would say, just, yeah.
So how do you want it, Deb, how do you want it?
To approve Minnesota statute 13D.021
Until,
as it relates to board meetings,
so the motion is,
meetings by phone or other, whatever.
Kim, you got that figured out?
Yeah,
I will, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, motion by Debbie, seconded by Julie to say it again. Approve.
approve Minnesota statute 13D.021 as it relates to school board meetings.
meetings, right.
Okay. You all heard the motion, is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And we want to get it right, I mean, we want to, so. Okay, moving on, we've got a special board meeting a week from tonight, same time, and we'll be under that statute, so if people have to do electronically, we can. And then, yeah, January 11th is New Year, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Scott, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Julie. In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. 7:33 PM, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for coming in and watching on the screen tonight. Thank you. Kim, you got some.